Hi and welcome back. It's Nancy Beauvier here with Agape and NEXsteps. And our topic this week is going to be about the transference of generational wealth. Now I know that there's been a lot of information in the news media over the course of the last few years about the largest transference ever of wealth intergenerationally. So what is the difference between the transferring of intergenerational wealth and generational wealth? Well, it's a bit of a nuance, actually. A lot of people use those terms interchangeably, but in its purest form, intergenerational wealth talks specifically about the passing on of wealth from one generation to another. By contrast, the pure definition of generational wealth is building that legacy to pass on your wealth and your legacy throughout a number of generations in a family. So today I'm going to talk with broad strokes, but more about the generational wealth aspect. So the first thing that I wanted to address is, what is your legacy? What is it that you're wanting to pass on? When most people think of transference of wealth, they think specifically about money, cash changing hands. But it's so much more than that when you're creating a generational wealth legacy plan. What you're wanting to look at is not just your assets, your stocks, your bonds, your cash, those types of actual literal wealth, but you're also thinking about things like properties and maybe shares in a family-owned business that you may want to pass on, keep in the family. We've all heard about the 4 generations long businesses that keep running. There may be that aspect. But one thing that people don't think of all the time, but is also important, is those intangible things. What are the intangibles that you'd like to pass on in your family? What are your morals? What are your values? What are your ethics? Are you perhaps giving to a foundation or charities, things like that that can have a family legacy as opposed to a one-time donation, for instance, to a favorite charity or a foundation. Now, when you're going to be making up your plan, there's a lot of things that you have to consider. The first thing that you need to do is take stock of your assets. And I'm talking about the intangibles and the tangibles. Take stock of all of those assets and then ask yourself, what is the legacy that you want to leave? What is it that you want to do with your wealth for your legacy? It might make sense to have a family meeting. Make sure that everybody's on the same page. What is near and dear to the family as a whole? And do you need to maybe compromise in some areas to ensure the legacy is going to be ongoing, and that once you've passed on, it's not all changed? Those are the kinds of things that you need to do. You also need to be very practical about planning for your generational wealth transference. There are things that need to be considered, such as estate laws. You have to also be considering different tax laws. There's ways to structure things to avoid paying top levels of tax and to keep things out of estate administration through probate. There's things like trusts. There's things like joint accounts, joint ownership that you can develop and create that will help ensure the passing on of your generational wealth and your legacy in a way that is relatively seamless, relatively inexpensive. I know that once upon a time, everybody just thought about the trust fund baby, and trusts were just the domain of the rich and famous. Well, trusts have come a long way, and they're a very, very efficient way to keep assets out of probate, which I'll remind you isn't so much anymore about the probate fees here in Canada as it is about the length of time that it takes to actually have an estate go through probate. You're looking at 2 years of holding up assets. If you can structure things in a trust, things can transfer seamlessly to your beneficiaries, to your heirs, in a planned way that you have structured appropriately with a proper trust lawyer to make sure that things are done properly, legally, and that there aren't any questions going forward. Some other considerations that really matter when you're planning for your legacy, regardless of how much wealth you have or don't have, are healthcare costs. Now, I have a lot of viewers who are in the US, and they have a very different system of healthcare in the States than we do in Canada. It can be expensive here in Canada, depending on what your care needs are as you age, and depending on how much you want to spend. There's also third-party insurances that you can purchase that help protect and allow for other expenses that may come up, but of course there's a cost to those insurance plans. So you do want to consider what your health care needs are so that you can appropriately plan and get a better handle on what actually is going to be passed on. Are you taking advantage of things like your tax-free savings account or different registered plans that you can put money into? Make sure that you talk to a proper financial professional to see about the impacts of that. Here in Canada, we have the RRSP, which defers taxes during your working years, allows you to accumulate with a tax write-off, with the intention that once you're retired, you're in a lower tax bracket and you'll be able to draw on that money and pay less taxes on it. But there are implications to that. It depends on how much money you've accumulated. Once you turn your RSP into a RIF, the government designates how much you have to take out of that account every month. And that can impact other pensions that you may be eligible for, other programs that you may be eligible for. So make sure that you have a proper plan in place with a proper wealth planning strategy and avoid any surprises once you have retired. The most important thing to keep in mind here is people create these legacy plans generally out of love, and they want their families, their loved ones, to carry on certain traditions and to live in a certain style and to enjoy a certain lifestyle. You know, there's a lot of family cottages, family cabins that people like to pass on. Memories have been made there, and the people who are passing these on want to preserve those memories for future generations. Again, talk to the family. Not everybody wants that family cottage. It might make more sense to liquidate that property while you're still alive and put those funds into something that is more meaningful for the future generations. But whatever it is, communication is key. Make sure that you are sharing your plan. Make sure that you have the basic fundamentals in place as well. Make sure that you have your will. Make sure that you have that enduring power of attorney in place. Make sure that you do have the medical directive so that people know what it is that your wishes are if you're unable to speak for yourself. I'm going to leave that with you. Please hop on over to my website. You'll find a more detailed guide on there, on my blog post about a plan to put into place for this generational wealth transfer. And as always, at NEXsteps, we're always here to help you. If you have any questions that we can help you with, please just drop us a line and we'll be happy to connect with you and see how we can help you preserve your future in a way that makes sense for you. Thanks very much for joining me this week. I look forward to sharing more with you next time. Bye for now.